And I said, no, I need it. I really need it tonight.
He's not the kind of man who holds grudges, but he remembers, and he remembers for a very long time. Mel Brooks, the mad genius behind Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, is the man who turned chaos into art. For more than 6 decades, he's made audiences laugh until they cried. But behind every laugh was a quiet force of control, a man who ruled comedy with precision and discipline. Throughout his filmmaking career, Brooks encountered every type of actor, the brilliant, the eccentric, and the impossible. Some forgot their lines, some ignored his direction, and others stepped onto his set believing they were bigger than the movie itself. For Mel, that was enough. Once your name went on his mental blacklist, it stayed there forever. He never shouted, he never slammed a door. He simply went silent and erased you from his story. From the producers to Spaceballs, every film served as a reminder. Brooks could rewrite history or remove you from it without a single warning. Now, after a lifetime of silence, Mel Brooks is finally ready to tell the truth. He's opening up about the betrayals, the tense moments on set, and the names that nearly brought his productions to the edge of collapse. 5 actors, each gifted, each unforgettable, but remembered by Mel for all the wrong reasons. And for the first time, he's naming them. Which faces made Mel Brooks say never again? Who were the stars talented enough to shine, but too proud to stay? Stay until the end, because what you're about to discover might just change the way you see Hollywood's most beloved legends. Number 1, Gene Wilder. Some betrayals come from strangers. Mel Brooks's deepest wound came from a friend. Gene Wilder wasn't just another actor. He was Brooks's creative twin, the spark to his fire. Together, they didn't just make comedies, they changed what comedy could be. The producers, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, each one wasn't just a hit, it was a revolution. But after Young Frankenstein, something shifted. Wilder had written most of that film's script. Brooks had shaped it, directed it, and fought tooth and nail to keep it in black and white. The result was lightning in a bottle, an instant classic. But behind the curtain, a fracture had already formed. Wilder had another story burning inside him. The adventure of Sherlock Holmes's smarter brother. He wrote it, he wanted to direct it, and he wanted Mel to produce. Brooks said no, not because it lacked humor, not because it wasn't good, but because, as he later put it, Gene thought he was ready. I knew he wasn't. Wilder saw that as betrayal. He had expected support, but Brooks gave him distance. That distance turned into silence. Wilder went on to make the film without him. The cast looked familiar. Marty Feldman, Madeline Kahn, but the rhythm was gone. The spark between them had dimmed. For 4 years, Brooks and Wilder didn't speak. No fight, no headlines, just a quiet separation. 2 men who once finished each other's jokes now walked different paths. Brooks reportedly told a friend, "It was like watching your brother pack up and leave home, except he took your best joke with him." They would meet again years later by accident at an event neither had planned to attend. No speeches, no apologies, just 2 old friends sharing the same room, and maybe for a moment, remembering how good the laughter used to sound. There was no grand apology, no tearful reunion, just a handshake, a few exchanged jokes, and something that looked almost like friendship again. But a crack remained. They never worked together after that, not out of anger, but out of quiet disappointment. Brooks once said Gene Wilder was the only actor he ever trusted with his unfinished thoughts. He could hand Gene a scene half-formed, a character without a punchline, and Wilder would complete it as if he already knew where it was meant to go. After Smarter Brother, that trust never returned. Wilder had stepped outside the circle, and Mel Brooks, for all his laughter, never let anyone step out twice. Publicly, they were warm, kind, respectful, but in Brooks's private universe, the one held together by rhythm, instinct, and loyalty, Gene Wilder was the one who broke the thread. Not out of cruelty, but enough to leave a mark. Because sometimes the person who knows you best knows exactly where to pull. Number 2, Frank Langella. Some actors lose a role, but Langella lost the director himself. On paper, he was perfect. Brooks was developing Dracula, dead and loving it, and Langella had already played Dracula on Broadway to great acclaim. Tall, magnetic, deeply theatrical. Everything seemed right until it wasn't. He was Dracula, at least the serious version of him, And that was the problem. Mel Brooks wasn't making serious. He wasn't after gothic tragedy or candlelit stares soaked in drama. He wanted chaos, pratfalls, gags that landed like lightning. A vampire who could deliver a monologue 1 minute and trip over a candelabra the next. But Frank Langella walked into pre-production as if he were about to reprise Hamlet. From the very first day, the tone was wrong. Rehearsals dragged. Brooks, who usually ran his sets like a finely tuned circus, found himself slowing down. Langella didn't react to jokes. He didn't improvise. He spoke his lines like sacred scripture, heavy, measured, immune to spontaneity. He wasn't playing Dracula, Brooks later told a friend. He was playing a saint. Brooks tried to steer him back with notes, nudges, gentle pushes. Nothing worked. Langella would nod politely, then return to the exact same marble statue performance. Tension began to build behind the scenes. Brooks needed momentum, but Langella brought only gravity. Scenes meant to soar collapsed under the weight of every serious pause. The rest of the cast, veteran comics and character actors, started hesitating. Crew members whispered, "Is this a comedy or an opera?" Then came the breaking point. During a test read, Brooks handed Langella a new line, a classic Brooks twist, dramatic on setup, ridiculous on punchline. Langella blinked, paused, then asked flatly, "Do you want me to mock the text?" Brooks stared at him for a beat and replied, "No, I want you to survive it." That was the last straw. By the end of the week, Langella was gone. No shouting, no statement, no scandal, just a quiet replacement. Leslie Nielsen, a different kind of Dracula, one who could play it straight while the world around him fell apart in perfect chaos. That was what Brooks wanted, not gravitas, but control. Nielsen delivered it, Langella didn't. Officially, the change was called creative differences, but anyone close to the production knew the truth. Mel Brooks wasn't going to wrestle a Shakespearean statue into doing slapstick. He wanted someone who understood the joke before the punchline hit. Langella never did. He left the film quietly and never spoke of it again. Brooks, to his credit, never said a harsh word about him in public, but whenever Dracula, dead and loving. It came up in interviews. Brooks spoke of Leslie Nielsen with a single word: perfect. Langella's name never entered the conversation. In Brooks' world, there were only two kinds of actors: those who elevated the madness and those who were consumed by it. Langella came in wearing a crown, but Mel wasn't building royalty, he was building chaos. And in his world, you had to love the fall. Number 3, Chevy Chase. Mel Brooks had a sixth sense for energy. He could feel before a line was spoken or a scene rehearsed, whether someone belonged in his world. With Chevy Chase, every instinct in him said no. They never collaborated, not once, and that was no coincidence. It was deliberate. Throughout the 1980s and early 90s, Chase's name came up again and again. Studio executives pushed hard. He was a star, a proven name, the face of American comedy with a sharp wit and a signature deadpan delivery. But every time, Brooks shut it down. No hesitation, no meetings, just a quiet, decisive no. Because Mel Brooks didn't cast fame, he cast rhythm, trust, and chaos that could be controlled. And in his gut, he knew Chevy Chase would never fit that dance. Why? Because Chevy Chase broke the first rule of Mel Brooks's world. He didn't play well with others. Brooks had seen it long before the idea of collaboration ever came up. On talk shows, in quiet industry stories, in warnings from mutual friends. Chevy was sharp, fast, and dangerously funny. He could light up a room, then drain it just as quickly. Brooks reportedly told a casting director, "He's not acting. He's just waiting for everyone else to stop talking so he can prove he's the smartest in the room." But Brooks didn't want the smartest man in the room. He wanted the most generous, someone who could land the punchline and still leave space for another to get the last laugh. That wasn't Chevy. The closest they ever came to working together was during casting for Spaceballs. Chase's name came up for Dark Helmet. He had the dry tone, the deadpan face, the right rhythm, but Brooks barely entertained the thought. He wanted Rick Moranis. "Rick knows when to step back," Brooks later said. "Chevy only knows how to interrupt." For Brooks, chemistry mattered more than credit. Timing was sacred, ego was not. Privately, he described Chase as someone who crashed comedy instead of dancing with it. He admired the man's talent, the instinct, the wit, but hated the way it came wrapped in distance. Always smirking, always detached. Comedy to Brooks wasn't about irony, it was about belief. No matter how absurd the joke, you had to commit to it, live in it, mean it. Chevy didn't. There was one meeting between them, short, polite, and instantly forgettable. It ended with Mel offering a half smile and saying, "Maybe in another universe." Chase never made it into Mel's. Years later, Brooks hinted at it in an interview. Careful, measured, without naming names. "Some actors are so self-aware," he said, "they forget to be present. You can see them thinking about themselves while they're supposed to be in a scene." The host asked if he meant Chevy Chase. Mel just smiled and moved on. For Mel Brooks, chemistry was everything. The shared rhythm, the space between lines, the invisible contract that every good comedy relies on. Trust me and I'll trust you? But Chevy Chase didn't trust anyone. He used silence like a weapon, words like knives, and every exchange had to end with him on top. Brooks never cared about winning. He cared about the ensemble, about balance, flow, timing, trust. In the end, Chase wasn't blacklisted. He was simply left out. Not because he wasn't funny, but because he didn't fit. And in Mel Brooks' world, misfits were welcome as long as they understood the rhythm, but ego disguised as confidence? That stayed at the door. Number 4, Harvey Korman. On screen, Harvey Korman was gold. Brooks trusted him with some of the biggest laughs of his career, and Korman delivered every one of them. Blazing Saddles, High Anxiety, History of the World. Part 1. Korman could hold a ridiculous face just long enough to make you burst out laughing, then drop it with perfect precision. But behind that brilliance, there was tension, the kind Brooks rarely talked about. Korman came from the Carol Burnett Show, where he was the backbone of sketch after sketch. He was used to freedom, loose scripts, improvisation, a room that bent around his instincts. But Brooks's sets didn't bend. They were orchestrated, precise, more symphony than sandbox. Every line, every reaction, every pause was part of a larger rhythm, and when someone drifted too far off beat, the whole piece faltered. Korman, for all his genius, drifted often. Their biggest clash came during High Anxiety. Brooks had cast him as Dr. Montague, the pompous, sinister head of the Psychoneurotic Institute for the very, very nervous. Korman wanted to reinvent the role. New quirks, new lines, even full rewrites. Brooks shut it down. "We already wrote the funny part," he told him. "We just need you to do it." Korman didn't take it well. The set grew tense. He began pausing between takes, questioning blocking, second-guessing timing. Brooks, usually the first to joke or improvise, started cutting conversations short. What should have been a smooth, playful shoot turned into a series of quiet standoffs. Crew members later called it passive warfare. No yelling, no explosions, just constant negotiation. Mid-shoot, Brooks confided to a producer, "Harvey wants to be the director, but I already have that job." By the final week, the two were barely speaking. Brooks gave notes through his assistant. Korman kept to himself between takes. The energy that once made Blazing Saddles sing had turned stiff and cold. The rhythm gone, the laughter forced, the trust quietly broken. The performance still worked. Harvey Korman was simply too good to let the tension show. On screen, he was flawless, timing sharp, delivery perfect. But Mel Brooks never forgot what it took to get there. After High Anxiety, Korman's name quietly vanished from future projects. Not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. Brooks would later explain it in his own way. Some actors bring joy to a set. Harvey brought brilliance, but it always came with resistance. There was no public fallout, no dramatic goodbye, just a quiet understanding that they'd gone as far as they could together. Korman stayed proud of their work. He spoke kindly of Brooks for years, and Brooks, to his credit, never denied Korman's impact on his best films. But the partnership was done. The rhythm had broken. And Mel Brooks, more than anything, built his world on rhythm. He could handle madness. He could handle divas, eccentrics, full-blown chaos wearing a costume. But when collaboration turned into competition, when laughter started to feel like combat, that was where Brooks drew the line. He didn't care about winning, he cared about the laugh. And when the laugh cost more than it was worth, he walked away. Number 5. Jerry Lewis. Mel Brooks admired genius, but he had no patience for arrogance. And with Jerry Lewis, he saw one buried inside the other. Both men were architects of comedy, builders of absurd worlds where chaos made sense. Both wrote, directed, and starred in their own visions. For years, studios dreamed of pairing them together. It never happened. Privately, Brooks described Lewis as brilliant and exhausting. He respected the Nutty Professor. He respected the legacy, the precision, the invention, but not the man behind it. The breaking point came in the mid-1980s during early casting talks for Life Stinks. Brooks's dark social satire about a billionaire forced to live on the streets. Someone floated Jerry Lewis for the lead. For the studio, it sounded like a dream. 2 comedy legends, 1 project. But for Brooks, it sounded like a nightmare waiting to happen. The studio had floated Jerry Lewis's name for a major supporting role. They claimed it would add prestige, a touch of brilliance. But Mel Brooks didn't buy it. "I don't need someone who thinks he's funnier than the film," he reportedly told his producer. Brooks knew Lewis's reputation. Rewriting lines on the spot, hijacking direction, consuming every bit of oxygen in the room. Brooks wasn't built to share control, not in the edit bay, not on the set. They met only once. A mutual friend had arranged dinner, hoping sparks might turn into synergy. Brooks came curious. Lewis arrived late, then launched into a non-stop 15-minute speech about the evolution of American comedy, barely looking at Mel across the table. Brooks listened, waited for a moment of connection that never came, and quietly excused himself before dessert. After that night, the idea was dead. Mel later said he didn't want to collaborate, he wanted applause. And that was that. Publicly, both stayed cordial. No open insults, no feuds. But insiders knew there was no warmth, no respect, no sense of a missed partnership, just mutual dismissal. Brooks once joked, "When it comes to comedians, I don't cast the ones who think they're the center of the universe. I already have a son." That summed him up perfectly. Mel Brooks built ensembles, ordered chaos where madness had rhythm and ego served the joke, not the other way around. He let stars shine, but only if they understood the whole galaxy didn't revolve around them. Jerry Lewis couldn't fit into that orbit. His ego burned too bright, too self-contained. Brooks saw it clearly. "Working with Jerry," he said privately, "would have been nuclear, not because of talent, but because of everything else. The rewrites, the explosions, the control fights, too loud, too much, too late. There was never a scene, never a phone call, not even a real offer, just a man Mel Brooks respected from afar." Because even geniuses can get exiled when they start mistaking the film set for a reflection of themselves. Brooks didn't need to raise his voice or make a scene. He simply closed the door quietly and for good. Some actors missed out because they weren't good enough. But these 5, they had the skill. What they lacked was trust, timing, humility, or just an understanding of the room they were in. And with Mel, once that trust was gone, there was no coming back. You weren't just cut from the project, you were erased from the dialogue altogether. So tell me, who do you think almost ended up on this list, or maybe should have? Drop your guesses in the comments below. And if you want early access to the next episode of Hollywood's Hidden Blacklist, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the channel for members-only deep dives. Because in Mel Brooks' universe, getting cast wasn't the victory, staying cast was.